What is your worst roommate stories? Story 1. Right after college, I lived in a house that rented out rooms on an individual basis. Most people were completely fine, but you'd get the occasional shit roommate. Then there was Doug. Doug was about our age, unemployed, and an alcoholic who would drink himself to blackout almost every day. He was also a total slob and would make huge messes in the kitchen before going back to his room to drink some more and blast loud music. The next day, he wouldn't remember anything, see the big mess in the kitchen and whine about people being gross. Of course, when any of us pointed out that it was his mess, he'd always say he didn't remember doing it and that it couldn't be his mess. Yeah, Doug. I can't imagine why you don't remember. I'm sure the handle of vodka you drank last night had nothing to do with that. He was eventually kicked out because his parents refused to pay his rent anymore. I genuinely hope he got some help because the amount he drank every day would kill an elephant. Story 2. In my last 2 years of school, I rented a house split between 5 guys, one of whom was a last-minute addition that I begged them not to let live with us. I even offered to pay the rent on his room while I looked for a new one, but I got outvoted, and so we had this guy, who I'll call Roger because he looked like Roger from American Dad. Roger did not seem physically able to walk without stamping his feet. Multiple guests commented on how fucking loud he was. Oh, and he wore his winter boots inside. Roger said our Wi-Fi was too slow. He wanted to play Xbox Live while watching Netflix. So he ran an Ethernet cable from our kitchen through the front hall and up the stairs into his bedroom. He didn't tape it down nearly either. It hung low in several spots, giving our house the appearance of a spaceship in disrepair. He loudly proclaimed how brilliant he was and how much faster the internet was now. Not realizing someone had already cut the Ethernet cable, Roger frequently fell asleep with loud music or TV playing on his tower speakers, and would not turn it off unless his favorite roommate asked him to. Yes, he would tell the other 3 of us to flip off and then act all apologetic if one would tell him to be quiet. One night it came to a head. He fell asleep during exams with some loud music playing and it woke the whole house up. All of us, his man crush one included, knocked on his door for almost an hour, trying to get him to turn it down. When he wouldn't answer, we decided to jimmy his lock and turn it down ourselves. He was fast asleep with noise-canceling headphones on. All this time he was falling asleep to music and TV. It was just to antagonize us. Story 3. Senior year of boarding school, my roommate stole my prescription Adderall, oxys from getting my wisdom teeth out, and alcohol I had hidden in a chest under my bed while I was away for the weekend. She ended up overdosing and then told the school. I gave it all to her. I got suspended, lost my scholarship for the remainder of the semester, and almost had my college acceptances rescinded. Story 3. Was dating a girl during COVID. She ended up being nuts, so I dumped her. But she started talking to my roommate to try to get information about me. She manipulated him into thinking I was abusive with her. So they colluded and contacted all my dating apps and got me banned on pretty much every dating app. When I found out, my roommate filed a false restraining order and made up some story that I cornered him, shoved him X. I had to hire a lawyer, which cost me $5,000. When we went to court, I had so much evidence that he was lying that he didn't go through with the case, and we both signed a mutual settlement agreement. I lost my TSA pre and global entry and had to go back and forth with TSA for 8 months to get that back. Worst thing is I still lived with the guy for a good 4 to 5 months. Because of financial reasons and because of the agreement, I could never speak to him about it. Moved into a house with my 3 friends. One was my best friend, and he was cool. The other was his girlfriend and our mutual friend, who was also another girl. We were the luckiest people alive because we were renting a 3-bedroom house for $500 a month. My buddy grew up poor, and I was homeless for a year. We both knew how lucky we were. We fought hard for everything we had. But the 2 girls we lived with were spoiled. They fucked everything up for us. They would do everything from invite strangers over to party without asking us on work nights, to skipping the rent. They would steal our food and never go grocery shopping. They would turn the AC down to 63 in the middle of 100 heat waves, causing our utility bill to be higher than our rent. They'd break shit in the house and start arguments with each other. The one girl even brought in 2 friends to live in her bedroom with her for 6 months, without even asking us. I worked a seriously demanding job at the time. I woke up at 4 a.m. every morning and got to work by 5 a.m. I wouldn't be home until anywhere from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. most nights. It was incredibly stressful. This was very difficult when the girls kept inviting anywhere from 10 to 30 people to party at our house every fucking night. I even came home at 1 a.m. once to find a stranger passed out in my bed covered in vomit. They also played music so loud every night that it would shake my bedroom wall. The girls didn't give a fuck because they just called out constantly and eventually quit their jobs. Did I also mention that half these strangers were teenagers who were illegally drinking at our house and then driving home? One night, my friend's girlfriend got drunk and started stabbing the bedroom door with a knife. This isn't even our property. My buddy went to stop her, and she stabbed him 3 times. I had to go pin her against the wall and have some random stranger come grab the knife from her friend. It was fucking insane. I had to beg the landlord not to kick us out and replace the door. One time, somebody in the house ripped the shower head off in the shower during one of their parties. The threads were ruined, and I had to replace the entire pipe. They also raided our fridge and went through my month's worth of food I had just bought in a single night. This was a recurring event. I eventually bought a mini fridge and a lock for my door. That worked for a while, until someone drunkenly fell through my door in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. One of the girl's friends fucking hated me because I'd always come out and kick people out. See, my roommate was a small girl who would tell me she'd stop doing this shit, but then do it the next day anyways. She ended up befriending this huge girl who would shit-talk me constantly in my own house for her. The bitch would constantly disrespect me in front of people and tell them to keep partying. She didn't even fucking live there. She just came over to talk shit, get drunk, and do coke on the living room table my buddy and I bought. That table also got broke into one night. One time, they had so many people in the house that a floor joist broke. My buddy and I had to fix it to keep us all from getting kicked out. It cost us a ton of money and an entire weekend that I should have spent relaxing. It's just another thing to add to the list I had to fix there. I fixed lights and windows that were shattered, punched drywall, toilets, holes in the yard from cars parking in the yard, outlets that were ripped out, paint that was scratched or drawn on, our mailbox after being hit by a drunken teen, countertops that had been burned by thousands of cigarettes, busted water pipes from idiots crawling under the sink. I could go on all day. I spent thousands on this house to avoid losing the only place I could afford to rent. One day I came home from work to a complete nightmare. They broke half the drywall in the living room. Somebody had scratched up the hardwood floor so bad that half of it would need to be replaced. The curtain rods on 2 of the windows had been ripped off the wall. The kitchen sink had been pulled off the wall and had leaked into the floor all night. Our refrigerator had been turned over entirely. This was when the table I bought was snapped in 2. There was vomit all over the house. People were passed out on the ground everywhere. There was coke on every flat surface in the house. My bookshelf had been knocked over, and half of them were burnt in the yard from what I heard my buddy tell me. I just quit that day. I recorded it all, met up with the landlord, and showed them the video later that day. She was understandably furious. I admitted to her that I had been repairing things for about a year now to hide it from her. She wasn't even angry at me, surprisingly. She was just happy one of her tenants was being honest. I sent her all the video evidence and told her that the people were all still there when I left, just passed out on the floor. I told her I had found another living arrangement and had to leave. She thanked me and I left. I had packed all my stuff that night and left without saying a word. About the time I got done talking to the landlord, my roommate was messing me how she needed help cleaning and fixing the house. I just ignored her and took all my stuff to my girlfriend's house. She later messaged me, saying the cops were there. She had an entire court case about it and was evicted. She had to pay the last month's rent and utilities alone, as well as all the damages. I haven't talked to her since then. Story 5. Freshman year of college, I had a roommate who would get high on ecstasy with her BF and come back to our dorm room and bone while I was also in the dorm room. She also listened to Bass Hunter non-stop and had up-close pictures of her own eyeballs all over the room. Story 6. Freshman year of college. I got assigned a roommate who was the antithesis of what I put on my roommate matching questionnaire. He was loud, smelled horrible, and had no concept of personal space, private property. A few times I caught him trying to use my computer, or rifling through my desk looking for stuff while I was in class. He said he was supposed to be on medications, not sure if it was for ADD or some other psychiatric issue, but never took them, which exacerbated the whole situation. Finally convinced the powers that be to let me switch rooms. And it made a big difference. I heard that other guy ended up going through like 3 other roommates after me in barely 1.5 years before he got kicked out of school. Story 7. Roommate lived at my place for 6 months. Spent most of his time in my room, smoking my weed when I was away. Didn't pay rent and was upset when I told him to leave. Then I became his worst roommate by calling his grandma and told her that he never paid any rent and had her come pick him up. Story 8. I lived with 2 other of my really good friends at one point. One was fine and dandy minus the fact that he would cook for himself, not do the dishes. Then complained that there was no dishes for him to cook because we stopped cleaning up after him. The other I am no longer friends with. And this is partially the reason. He was a bartender and he loved to party. He would routinely bring groups of people back to our place after work, often around 3 a.m. One time, I had to be up for work at 6. He brought a bunch of his coworkers back to our place, shit-faced. And they started playing Rock Band at 3:30 a.m. then got upset when I told them to fuck off. Next, due to the fact that he partied so much, he would sleep in. He also had an alarm clock that would go off until he turned it off. You could hear his alarm clock throughout the apartment. For some reason it wouldn't wake him up. You could sit there and listen to it go off for like 30 minutes, but the second you opened his door, it would wake him up and he would be like, "Oh sorry," and then turn it off. This happened almost every day. I would pound on the walls shouting at him to turn it off, but he wouldn't until you actually went in the room. He would get mad if you came in to turn it off for him, despite the fact that he worked nights. His alarm was set for early in the morning for some fucking weird reason. Finally, our lease was coming up. We all agreed to resign. We needed all 3 of us to afford it. We kept asking him over and over if he was going to resign, and he was always like yes, yes, yes. The day we had to resign, I left for work. And my other buddy left for work. We planned to meet later to go resign. A couple hours later, I'm at work and my other roommate calls me and says, "Yo man, I just got home. And all of our other roommates' shit is gone." I was like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, all his shit is gone. And there's a letter just saying sorry, not resigning." He then proceeded to ghost us for weeks. We eventually ended up confronting him at his work, where he eventually admitted to us that he had never planned on resigning, and that he felt the best way was to just wait till we left for work, and then move all his shit out so he didn't have to deal with the confrontation. This same guy had a crippling drug and alcohol addiction that we helped him beat, and then he proceeded to treat us and tell us that we were enablers despite the fact that we weren't the ones drinking and doing drugs. He was. Story 9. College roommate, junior year, 7 years ago. We had an on-campus townhouse. I found a dingleberry of his in the shower. He had a smell that followed him. Luckily, it was a cyst. So he went home and got it treated and the smell was gone after that. Unluckily, there was an instance of blood spatter on the wall right by our toilet. He visited his parents one weekend and left his door open. You could detect a stench from down the hall. Me and another roommate poked our head in to see what was smelling. Roommate said, "Don't look down." I looked down, and there was brown underwear. We closed the door. Stench was gone. The dude also used bar soap that stayed in the shower. That's fine. The problem was that we knew he wasn't using it enough because it stayed the same size. He also cooked and never cleaned. He was pleasant in conversation and literally in nothing else. Not fun to play games with. Not fun to do homework with. Story 10. She failed to mention that she was an escort. There were strange men in our apartment at all times. She also had an OnlyFans that she would create content for in our shared living room, leaving her butt plug out on our shared furniture. Needless to say, I quickly got the fuck out of there after 2 months. Story 11. Early in college. I stayed in the house with 3 roommates. In the 8 months that I was there, they washed the dishes about 3 or 4 times. They would do the thing of letting dishes soak for days, weeks on end, sometimes in bleach water, in lieu of actually washing them. It even got so bad that they would replace their pots and pans instead of washing them. I had limited myself to a single cup, plate, bowl, etc. that I had brought with me and kept in my room so to keep from adding to the hoard. Even kept my groceries in my dorm mini fridge that I kept in my room a couple times. I spent a couple hours washing all of their dishes just so I could have enough room to wash my own. Also with the naive hope that maybe once they had a clean slate, they would keep up with it. It didn't take, of course. Eventually, I just got fed up with that and washed my dishes in the bathroom. I ended up leaving and getting my place shortly thereafter. While I'm still friends with most of them nearly 25 years later, I never had roommates again. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.